I'm going to butcher exactly what he said, but he said, this is French bread, but the Vietnamese do it better. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get in the middle of that, but this is delicious.
You're listening or watching to the Pure World Podcast, and today I'm sitting down with Hannah Davis, the founder of Bangs Shoes. Okay, Hannah.
Hey.
For anybody who's listening who doesn't know who you are or what Bangs Shoes is, do you want to give them like a quick rocket pitch or a background story?
Yeah, I founded an everyday adventure shoe company called Bangs Shoes, and if you're watching, they are behind me. And if you're not, you can check out the website. We have nature-inspired embroidery and screen print options on high tops, low tops, and slip-ons. Cool.
And maybe a little bit background on how you even came up with the idea.
My story, I feel like, always takes me way longer than it needs to be, but I have a political science degree and a minor in Mandarin, so I have no business running a shoe business, but here we are. I taught English in China for a year and saw Chinese workers wearing this monochromatic green shoe that I thought looked really different. Just because when you think about this category of footwear, they're Vans, Converse, Superga, Keds, and a lot of the most commonly worn shoes have a like some color upper, like the part that has your laces on it, and then a white sole. But what was really unique about these shoes that I saw being worn in China was the fact that they were monochromatic all the way around. So the canvas matched the upper. So they looked like boots, but they were canvas shoes. I thought that was really cool. So I also really felt passionate about making sure my career had some sort of positive impact, whatever that might mean to anybody. But for me, I identified it as, I can get into that part later. That's a whole other tangent.
No, that's awesome. All of that is really interesting. So when was the first time you ever went to China, and why did you go?
I went in 2007 or 2008 with a study abroad.
What year? Was this like a sophomore, junior year?
Junior
Okay.
College. Yep. And I met this Chinese professor. So somebody told me in college, don't take classes, take professors. And I from a mentor professional perspective, sort of like fell in love with this professor that I had. I thought she was so cool. I'm 6'2", and she was 5'1" maybe. And she walked into this room and owned it. And she was speaking in Mandarin. It was a Mandarin class. So she was speaking in Mandarin, and I was just like entranced with her. This was, I don't know, maybe her third language, and she was lecturing in it. And it's because Mandarin is it is a tonal language. It sounds so different to try to absorb. Right. And so I was like, who is this person? I need to absorb all of her knowledge. So my first class with her was when I was a sophomore in college, and I followed her around. I took every class she offered. And when I had taken all of her classes, I started taking her colleagues' classes. And I just fell in love with the Chinese culture, and I fell in love with all my Chinese professors, and they offered this study abroad trip. So I went, and then I fell in love with China, and it wasn't enough, that 6-week study abroad period. So I decided I was going to try to find a way to get somebody to pay me to live there. So I signed a contract teaching English and got over there. And then the rest, that's where I discovered these shoes, or saw somebody wearing these shoes, and then founded Bangs.
Wow. That's pretty incredible. It's a crazy, crazy story of stumbling upon like a culture that you end up falling in love with.
Yeah. I think, and I think I grew up in South Carolina and currently live in North Carolina. And it was just, Clemson there just wasn't a lot of diversity. And so seeing somebody so different was just very attractive to me. I was like, I can't put my finger on it, but I need more because I don't understand what's going on. I need to figure out how does this world exist in the same world I exist in?
Totally. Real quick, I'm going to give a mic adjustment, everybody. Just a little mic adjustment.
Sorry, I'm new.
No, it's fine. Okay. So this is going to be, hopefully. Yeah, that's good. If you could just, because we're looking at each other just talking right in there.
Oh God, that's
amazing.
Sorry.
Back to the stories. No, that's really interesting. So you decided to go after graduating.
That's right.
For a whole year to teach English.
That's right.
super interesting. My parents did something similar in Japan. So I always grew up with that Japanese culture kind of in the household. And then I ended up studying in Japan afterwards. So it's like it followed our family basically. I don't know much about the Chinese culture.
Very different.
Compared to Japanese.
Very different.
I know there's a little bit of animosity between the two cultures. I don't know if you know that. Like,
yeah, well, my students taught me about it, and it was a decade ago at this point that I was there, so I'm not up to date on the current, relationship. But at the time, my student, and I think it was interesting because a lot of my students, I went into it saying, "Oh, I heard that there's tension between the Chinese and Japanese cultures," and my students were like, "Yeah, my parents wouldn't like it, but I don't really, it doesn't bother me.
Right.
They're just students like I am." So it was interesting that there was even a lot of the political conversations that happen at like a macro level don't reflect, and that's obvious in any culture, but that's true for, I think, Chinese, in my experience, Chinese and Japanese relationships as well.
Totally. What is like one of your favorite parts of the Chinese culture?
I think how welcoming people are to outsiders. I just felt so loved, and that people, I'm 6'2". I taught in what was a small Chinese city, and I just kind of physically stood out because of how tall I am. And people would approach me, and if I looked confused, literally 10, 15 people would come up to me and say, "Can I help you?" And people like to try to practice their English. And I just felt very supported. And I had a friend of mine who started as a student and became a friend. And I was thanking her one day. "I feel so grateful that I met you. Thank you for showing me around, inviting me to your home, teaching me how to cook." And she said, "Well, no problem, because I know that if I was in the US that Americans would do the same for me." And I was like, "I don't know how to tell you, but like we might not,
I know it's an interesting, I've experienced some of that in my travels as well. In Nepal, they would say that guests are God. Guests are God. And so you treat them as as God. And that's something that I don't really, they talk about Southern hospitality.
Right.
In America.
Yeah.
That's a thing, but
right.
But it's different than like bringing someone into your home for 30 days, which is what they did in Nepal for me.
You met on the street.
It was my manufacturer, but still welcoming me in for 30 days. I don't know if many Americans would welcome in somebody into their home for 30 days. Long weekend, sure.
Right, a night.
10 days, yeah, a night.
But I feel like it's challenged me to try to do that. And another thing that I really loved is, and this was actually like, I learned this the hard way, that I embarrassed myself publicly in China, because in the US, if you invite somebody, especially, I guess I can't speak from a male perspective or from a female perspective, when you invite your friends to a birthday party, you don't pay. Your friends all chip in and make sure you don't spend a dime, like the whole night, sometimes like a weekend, 3 days in a row. And there, if you invite somebody, the person who invites you pays. And I discovered that at the end of the meal when, my Chinese friends were just waiting, and I was like, oh my gosh, and then someone explained it to me, and then I'm embarrassed. And now I try to, I practice that now. If I invite somebody to my home, or, if I want to plan a birthday party or something, it's my goal to if I'm inviting you and asking you to come and give me your time, I'm going to provide as much as I can. Maybe we do a potluck situation, but I'm going to do something above and beyond.
Yeah, no, absolutely. How about, in terms of like places that you visited while in China, are there any places that were really outstanding? Because I know I've seen some pretty incredible things just on social media, and then they're like mountain coasters, or like this, it's like a walking roller coaster where it looks like you walk on upside down. And where are all those crazy things? They're like almost always in China. Like there's some really, really interesting things.
I feel like, I don't know, if I could do my 20s over again, I think I would have taken more advantage of stuff like that. But I was so laser focused on whatever I thought success was, that I felt like I didn't prioritize or allow space for those kind of experiences. I certainly was going around, and absorbing nature, but I would have never, I would have been like, oh, that's not worth it. Which now I'm like, no, prioritize and make sure you have fun. That's
Right.
for the sake of fun.
Right.
So I think I could only answer landscape questions about China.
That's okay. What about, is it true that these shoes were maybe worn by farmers or something along those lines? What's the background of how you even came to find the shoes in China?
Right. So the style of shoe, so it was that monochromatic style of shoe, was worn by Chinese workers and farmers. Again, this was a decade ago, so I haven't been recently.
No, totally.
And our shoes are now manufactured in Vietnam. And
crazy.
we love our partner in Vietnam. Amazing humans, amazing factory. Very grateful. They've helped us improve our product so much. But the I guess like first inspiration and kind of skeleton of the shoe that inspired the monochromatic look, I did see, on Chinese workers and farmers. And so I had teachers that I was working with at the time that bought them, because you could buy them just off the street for, however much money at the time. And I just thought they were really interesting and there was something there. And I was really inspired by companies like Tom's that were using their business as a tool to impact social change.
Totally.
And I just lost my train of thought. What was
That's
the
okay.
question?
No, it was just like interesting about interested in how the idea for the shoes even came about, like where you ran into them. Were they being sold on like market streets?
Right. They were. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to, take the Tom's model, but improvise or do my own thing on it.
Totally.
And so I brought the shoes, inspirational shoes, to my students, and I said, "Oh, wouldn't these be cool? Like throwback?
Right.
We could reinvent it, make it like different.
Totally.
For present day consumers." And my students were all like, "That is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because like, why would I want to wear those?" I'm like, I don't know, it's cool, but it's because I was an outsider. I felt like I was able to like see a different version of it.
Totally.
And I'd be interested to know what my students would think now. So if anyone's listening, tell me what you think.
your old Chinese students.
Yeah, maybe.
That's so funny. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you made an impact on a lot of people.
Oh, I don't know.
For sure. Teachers, that's what teachers do.
I think they impacted me more than I impacted. I was not the best teacher.
That's okay. I'm sure.
I was out there doing my best.
I'm sure they learned something. I'm sure it was impactful for them, and in a way that you probably don't even expect it to have been.
Well, that's generous. Thank you.
Like, well, you're 6'2", so that was probably pretty unforgettable for them.
Right.
So,
well, and we had fun in some of the classes, and I actually feel like I learned more, and I have many memories of the humor, because I think that I never became fluent in Chinese or Mandarin. I was able to get around, and have conversations and do what I needed to do, but I certainly could never have in-depth conversations. And what amazed me so much about my students was that they could be funny in English, because I feel like you have to have such an understanding of language. And I don't know, it always amazed me, because it didn't matter that I couldn't understand everything in Mandarin and they were still learning how to be fluent in English, but we would be like cracking up at some of their skits, which was fun.
Would you go back to China right now?
Oh, absolutely. I would love that.
I would love to go to China. My sister worked in Shanghai for like a summer internship. But now, I mean, I feel like a lot of the people who I say that I want to go to China, they're like, oh, it might not be the best time to go. And I feel kind of like, well, is there ever going to be a great time to go?
Because of like
just political tensions and stuff that. And I don't know how much of that is true,
right?
Or how much of it is just hearsay and just fear in general.
Right. I feel like I would not go to North Korea.
Right.
And I would not go to Russia or anywhere kind of in like next to it in this very moment.
Right.
But no, I would feel very safe in China.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I'll have to put that on my. Especially,
do not take what I'm saying as truth. I don't know.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll fact check a little bit more before I buy my ticket.
My heart is saying it will be safe.
What about Vietnam? Have you been to Vietnam?
Of course. Yep.
Okay. Yep. Super cool. And what are your experiences there been like?
Just wonderful. We have an incredible factory partner. So we've actually worked with our Vietnamese factory partner for longer than we worked with our Chinese factory partner. And they've been just incredible and so welcoming, and they challenge us and bring so much value to our product in a way, and care about our brand and mission, and think, they are serving so many big customers, and in a lot of ways we're probably kind of annoying to them, because on a scale of their customers, they're working with the Doc Martens and the ASOSs of the world, and we come in and we're like, can we hello?
Yeah, no, totally.
And they are just have an entrepreneurial spirit and support us, and again challenge us, and say, hey, have you thought about doing this with your shoe? I think that this could improve the quality or the durability, or just so much value from a manufacturing perspective.
Totally.
I couldn't ask for a better factory partner.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, how about the culture of Vietnam? What have your experiences been like that? Is there any favorite foods, or how, would you?
So much good food. And yes. And so there's French influence. So I'm going to butcher exactly what he said, but he said, the CEO of the factory, who's become a friend of mine, was taking us around. We were getting just some street food, and he said, this is French bread, but the Vietnamese do it better. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get in the middle of that, but this is delicious,
Wow.
So they have just all different kinds of food, I don't know the exact word, but it's like different homemade noodles. So, I mean,
and what's the main city in Vietnam?
Ho Chi Minh City is I don't know if that's the biggest, but that's where we've spent the most time. And then another one of our factory locations, I'm not sure if bangs are actually made in this factory location anymore, because they sort of move us around. They have a couple different locations, is in Da Nang. And if anyone's ever seen those hands, it's like it went viral on Instagram a couple of years ago. That's in Da Nang.
Okay.
So it's a port city, and it's just like beautiful. I mean, all of Vietnam, it's just stunning. And one of the things that I love about Vietnam is that because the cities are so old and they have a respect for nature, the trees and vines are so intertwined with the cityscape. So it's like, I don't know, you walk down these alleys and nobody, they don't try to get rid of it, or let's unroot this tree. There's roots coming out. It just is, I don't know, it just has a magical nature element within the walls. I haven't traveled a million places, but that just stuck out to me as something very unique to that city.
Wow. That sounds beautiful.
It really is. I know every time I go there, I'm like, I could move here.
Yeah.
I'd live here.
Any other crazy travel places or just unforgettable? What's your favorite place you've ever been? Do you have a favorite or I really
classic? Haven't been that.
Where did you grow up again?
I grew up in South Carolina. So,
okay. What about down in South Carolina? What do you, anything fun?
My MO, I'm eat the same thing every day for a week. Right. If I find a hike I like, I do it every weekend for 2 years until someone's like, you need to try something else.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I would say I'm really focusing on exploring the US.
Totally.
I have not been to the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And because every time I'm like, I have a weekend or I'm going to do a travel, I go to Colorado. So I'm that person where I've spent a little bit of time in Arizona. I just did some hiking out in Utah with my family. But there's so much in the U.S. that I haven't seen. So I would really like to prioritize all 50 states.
Yeah, America has some really awesome things to see.
Alaska? Come on, an Alaskan cruise? That sounds... I'm a little scared of the cruise part, but just being out there.
I know. I swear I took the last Alaskan cruise before COVID hit.
Did you?
And we all got sick.
Okay, well, was it worth it?
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was really cool because you stop in all of these different cities in Alaska, because there's more than just Anchorage.
Right.
And I can't even remember the names. They're beautiful names, but they're cities that you couldn't get to unless you were taking a plane. Mm-hmm. I wanted to talk a little bit about Asheville, because that's where we are. That's where your office is.
Right.
What is Asheville? Sorry. What does Asheville mean to you? And why did you decide to put the office here?
I love Asheville. And so we have never had an office. This was more, so everything you see in here was in my house.
Right.
So I've worked from home for 10 years, coffee shop. So this was more a space thing where I was like, I need to be able to be in my house and not have 150 pairs of shoes in my house.
Totally.
I have one other employee that lives, and she doesn't even live in Asheville. She lives 30 minutes outside of Asheville. She lives in Waynesville. But my partner and I decided to settle here because we love the mountains and we wanted to be close to family. And in 2020, it just became very clear that proximity to family was literally the only thing that mattered.
Totally.
And so I just, and Victor loves the mountains and we're mountain bike hiking people.
Nice.
And it is truly magical. And it's a small town, but it's big enough that there's multiple yoga studios. There's so many breweries. There's so many hiking trails within an hour from here. If you did one every weekend, you still wouldn't be able to do them all. And there's little bustling places within 30, 45 minute drives, which is another reason why when we have time, I'm not like, oh, let's go to Europe, which I have never been. I had a layover in Germany and I got off the plane for 24 hours.
No, I 24 hours.
I count it.
Did you get out of the airport?
So listen to this. I was going to my childhood best friend's wedding in India. So she married this lovely Indian man. So it's like, if you get invited to an Indian wedding, you go.
Fun. Yeah, you gotta go.
So I went and there was the airspace over Turkey closed because there was tensions that, I don't remember what year this was in, but there was tensions that a war might break out. So they closed the airspace. So the flight got rerouted and in the air. So I was asleep for the first 3 or 4 hours and I woke up and the airplane was tense, but I was like, Hannah, you're literally a conspiracy. Like you're insane. Yeah. You're fine.
Bad vibes.
Yeah. I literally woke up and I was like, oh, but I was like, no, you're fine. You listen to way too much true crime. And okay. So then the flight attendant, I'm like, she's trying too hard to be calm. And they're like, we're about to land. So in my head, I'm like, we're about to land. That was the fastest flight of all time, or I must have been asleep forever.
Something's wrong.
Well, no, I got myself to the point where I was like, we're about to land in India and I've just been asleep this whole time. So I convinced myself that was the truth. Then they're like, we will be touching down in Frankfurt in 15 minutes. And I was like, oh, Frankfurt, madam, did I hear Germany? And she's like, no, you heard correctly. We're rerouting, blah, blah, blah. So we land and I realize that I have a college best friend that I haven't seen in 3 years who married a German man. So I'm WhatsApping her.
Nice.
I'm like, Rochelle, how far are you from Frankfurt? And she says, I live 30 minutes from Frankfurt. And I'm like, this sick. Is incredible. Fate. So I run to the front and I have this big smile on my face and I'm like, do you have any flights tomorrow? Can I stay overnight? And she goes, you're the only person I've talked to in 30 minutes with a smile on their face. And I'm like, we're in Europe, everybody. And there's a couple of people that are like, no, we're turning around, got a flight back to the US, decided not to carry on to India. But right. So I met up with her and her husband. They took me out that night. We did so I've been to Europe.
Yeah, no, yeah. If you got out of the plane, then you've been for sure. If you get, out of the airport, because there's some airports I've laid over, but I wouldn't consider I've been there. If you step foot on a street,
I'm like, my good. Passport got scanned.
Yeah. Yeah, you're good. That's pretty cool. Yeah, India's a place that I would like to go to. Well, how was the wedding?
The wedding was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it was so much fun. I'm so
something out of a Bollywood,
Well, they didn't do that extravagant. Okay. In my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, Julie, where did all this come from? Right. But Pranay told us that his friends were giving him all kinds of talking shit, smack to him just because they were like, this, it could have been bigger.
Right.
But from an American's perspective, I was like, whoa, this is wild.
So that was a friend from the Germany layover friend was from
college.
Clemson.
That's right.
And so what was Clemson like? If you were to describe it to somebody who's maybe considering what to do after high school, what would your impact and what would your, advice be for somebody who's graduating high school?
I don't think you need to go to college. Sorry, any parents that are listening. Yeah. I said what I said. I mean it. Unless you know exactly what you want to do. If you want to be a lawyer, if you want to be a doctor, if there's a professional path in healthcare or something that requires a graduate school degree, but I believe down to my toes that you can get more learnings from experience. So I would say identify somebody who has the job that you want and then just exist around them. Because a lot of times you might think that a career looks like a certain way, offer to work for free for a week, just come in, I wouldn't say shadow. We don't offer to shadow because people will be like, that is the most annoying thing ever. Like, I'm not just gonna have somebody follow me around. But if you're like, I'll do whatever, I'll answer phones, I'll do something for literally a day, 24 hours, whatever you need, I'm your person. And surprisingly, people will take you up on that. You might have to email them like 100 times.
Totally.
But, and I would say yes, if somebody like emailed me a bunch and was really persistent about it. And I think learning that you don't want to do something is just as valuable as if you do. So if you can identify all these jobs that you think you want and exist close to them or around them, you can start checking stuff off. Oh, I thought I wanted to work in fashion and I don't. Oh, I thought I wanted to own a coffee shop, work there for a week. Didn't want to do that. Start a shoe company. Don't want to do what that requires. So my advice would be to identify what you think you want to do and then do everything you can to get a reality check on what it would mean. And if you still want to do it, then don't take no for an answer.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. And I was just thinking, like, one other trait that I would recommend is to reinvent what learning and education means to you. Because if you've got this negative perspective on school or like learning, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to learn. I don't want to spend my time learning. I just want to do. You're going to have an unhealthy relationship with learning. Whereas I think if you embody and embrace that learning comes in all different forms, right, and it can be in any moment in life in general, you open your mind to that idea of like education is different and it comes in all different shapes and forms. And really what's important is, are you learning?
Absolutely.
And are you becoming a better person than you were the day before or the year before?
And I actually think that applies to every phase of life where I still, I've been doing this a decade. This month is Bang's 10th birthday and it's in waves. It goes in waves. I'm sure you've experienced the same thing where you're like, why am I doing this?
Totally. Yeah.
There's a million other things I could be doing that maybe my life would look different or better. I'd find success faster, differently, or whatever, however that might roll out. But when I get to those places where I'm like, I don't want to be doing this anymore, I say, well, what would you be doing? And I have never found a better answer because I am challenged by this. I am learning every day. I get to meet amazing people. And so I'm like, okay, well, if I still feel, why am I doing this in a year and I haven't gotten out of it, then I'll reconsider. But the longest slump I've had has been like maybe 3 or 4 months. And I'm like, well, you're learning, you're challenged, stick it out and see what happens. And then something will, like the circumstances or me, will change and I feel differently. But can you change your perspective on learning, I think should be something that even if you're like, oh, I've arrived, you just still don't lose.
Yeah. Yeah. One topic that I wanted to bring up before closing the podcast was, the idea of the privilege involved with, being generous.
Oh, I think about that all the time. Luxury, or like the generosity is a luxury for sure. I love that.
I heard that was like a topic that was kind of brought up on one of your prior podcast interviews, but they didn't get the opportunity to dive into the idea of like privilege and the role it plays in generosity, right? Like giving impact and stuff. So like, do you have any thoughts on just the concept of like how that's maybe changed your trajectory in life? Or
I guess I look at generosity differently, and both ways. When someone's being generous to me and when I'm being generous to somebody else, like accepting generosity, to let somebody else give them the luxury, and then realize, because you can't give out of an empty bucket. So whether it's time or happiness or fulfillment or peace, like being around somebody, because generosity doesn't have to be money or things, but being around somebody that's peaceful, you can absorb some of that. I very much love that and can totally. Get a lot of that from my partner actually, who's very peaceful and calm. Whereas I am not. So I don't know. I don't think I have any answers around it, but I love the concept because I guess it just makes me check my privilege and also because a lot of times people don't like to ask for help, or if somebody's being generous, you're like, oh no, I can't accept that. But like, shut up and take it sometimes. Hannah. Like just take it and let them be generous, or like give them the luxury of generosity. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for.
No. Yeah. It's all interesting. One thing that I kind of related the idea of privilege and generosity was like, it's related to this idea of how it could be considered a privilege to be sustainable.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely
that's,
is.
That's something that we're seeing all throughout the world. And, if we have the privilege to be sustainable, if we have the resources to ensure that we could be sustainable, I think it's non-negotiable.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, we're about to get into a black hole, but I think sustainability also changes, like because the world around us changes. And so what sustainability means today will be different in 5 years. And so, and it's also like as a company, and you might put these practices into play where you're like, oh, I'm aiming towards this goal of sustainability. And then the goal changes. You're like, oh shoot, but I'm already on this trajectory. It's going to take me however much longer to like shift over. So yeah, I mean, the sustainability piece of running a business and like the social impact piece of running a business is something that's my relationship within my business with those things have changed. And my expectations, of other people and their business in relationship to those things has changed from doing this for 10 years, but that might be, I'm just jaded at this point. So I don't know.
No. I think sustainability can come in all different shapes and forms. Right. And like the idea of sustainability doesn't even have to be limited to environmental, though it's often most tied to environmental sustainability. But like, I think in running a business, sustainability could mean, are your employees and contract workers and manufacturers, are they happy?
What does happiness mean to each person? Define it. What does success mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that it comes in definitely all shapes and forms. But I do think there are also trends with happiness, and there is like people have tried to measure happiness and create an index on the happiest countries and stuff like that. And it's not here. Yeah, I know. Well, and why is it not here? And what generates happiness? These are all questions. I think fulfillment plays a large role in happiness and doing something that is fulfilling and that you feel prideful about. For me, that's
basic needs.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And you can't really feel prideful about your work if you're hungry and starving.
Or if your babies are.
Yeah. So that becomes Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's all relevant too. But I hope
let's just live off the grid.
Yeah.
That's usually where I end, but then I'm like, no, I can't.
You need internet.
I do. And also, I mean, I am just now at this point in my life, like I want to be so bad the person that's like, oh, like I want to be a minimalist. I want to be grab a toothbrush and a t-shirt. Let's backpack for a week. It ain't me. It will never be me. Like I don't know. I need structure. Which is again, like there's a piece of privilege and luxury in that. But at the same time, it's like, if you have those choices, I'm like, I don't think I'll ever be that person that just goes with the flow.
Baby steps. I think that there's something valuable in uncomfortability.
I agree.
And the more you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, the better you are with dealing with uncomfortable situations.
Yes.
And it could start with a cold shower in the morning.
Yes.
Or a workout or meditation, because that's pretty difficult for me to do.
Oh, yeah.
So I do think that that's another level of like getting into like spirituality of like freeing yourself from
she's trapped
from the earthly the earthly objects, and traveling with just a t-shirt and a toothbrush, you might find happiness from doing something like that. Like one thing that I learned on this camping trip that I had once, where we hiked up, I don't know, 10 miles into the mountains in Colorado. I could be exaggerating, or I could be
0.1.
underestimating. No, it was far. It was far. It was a whole day of trekking, and we lugged all of our tent and sleeping bags and some dried food, and it was windy and it was cold. This was in October in Colorado, late October, like
Pass.
cold. Yeah, it was cold. And we were just so uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable, but coming back home and taking a shower and then going out to a Mexican restaurant for some tacos, like it was like, I appreciated the warm shower and the clean clothes and the tacos so much more after I've been in cold for 48 hours. And it's that.
Well, so I'll do that. So my partner and I just hiked, Mount Massive. So we're hiking at 4 a.m. We're back by like, I don't know, 2 or 3 or something like that. It's, the second tallest 14er in Colorado, I think.
Yeah.
So I'll do short sprints.
Right.
But like, I need to come back to some sort of structure, but like but I also have to, that whole trip was planned, so I'm like, I knew going in, and I hustled for 2 weeks to get everything set up to like do all the stuff. But I like the idea of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. And I feel like public speaking does that, or like yoga, breathe through the uncomfortable situation you're in. Lots of lessons like
that.
I
heard that like before you go on stage for anything, like you feel really nervous, but it's really just your body being excited.
Hey.
And you could reframe the nerves as excitement. And so there are little techniques like that. And I think that in today's age, with access to the internet, we have this incredible capability to share ideas and to learn from each other. I mean, that's what brought you to China, right? I mean, well, you had a professor, but still, just like
ideas, the newness.
Yeah, just this concept of idea exchange and culture exchange today, I think.
Right. I think about that a lot with TikTok, that, you know, I feel like even in the past, I'm 35, so it's not like I'm saying that, I know all these things, but I genuinely think that my rate of absorbing newness in the past 2 years, where I'm just exposed at this fast, because in college, we had the internet however many years ago, but you had to seek the information. So you had to identify a thought and then you had to go find it. But on TikTok, how fast I'm moving at the speed of light. And if I see something and I wait long enough, then the algorithm's giving me more. So I am learning so much about topics that I didn't even know interested me spiritually,
and then fascinating.
Tapping into different groups, or like if I get onto a farm TikTok where I'm like, do I need a cow?
Yeah. Should I get chickens?
Yeah. Like, do I? And then I do feel like,
and then you get a little deeper into the chicken TikTok and you're like, wait, this is way too much.
Now.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Flip it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's funny. Yeah.
Should I build my own house in a cave? Yes. I could do it.
So
this
aesthetic.
guy's doing it. Yeah. This man, like with the axe, I'm fully capable.
He's been in construction for his whole life.
No, he did it in 12 seconds. I can do it.
Oh gosh. Well, how about building a business? What do you think about this? You didn't even go to school for entrepreneurship or business, right? So you kind of got thrown in it. That was kind of like building a home in a cave and not being a construction worker or carpenter. And so what was that like?
I have two things. So the first one is, I actually think that it was one of my greatest benefits in this process, because I had no preconceived notions or lesson plans that I felt like I needed to follow. Right. Oh, success looks like this, building a business looks like this. I literally just went in and was like, what's the vibe? Like, let's see what's going on. And then I have an incredible business partner that I met when I was bartending and trying to build Bangs. And he and his wife have absolutely, he's a 50% partner, and I would give them 50% of the company every day for the last 10 years and for the next 10 years for the knowledge. And, they did invest financially, but I actually think that the time and the knowledge resources that I've gained, they're both equally valuable, but the knowledge that I've learned, I will carry with me. So I think it's given me, my experience with this mentor of mine has given me the tools that if something happens with Bangs or it closes down tomorrow, then I feel so confident from this experience that I will be okay and that I can take my learnings. And I actually think that's one of my favorite parts, aside from like the people and just the nature of what Bangs has created, like outside, just as its own unit. That's obviously quite lovely, and I'm very proud of that. But I'm really grateful that I can take this experience and say, okay, I have the confidence in a way that I didn't have 10 years ago in myself, to be a successful, happy, whatever that means, at each phase in my life.
Yeah.
Because I know how to solve a problem now. It's not about, I will never be the smartest person in the room. I will never be the most hardworking person in the room, but I feel like I will continue to ask questions, and I'm okay not being the smartest or the most hardworking or the best at whatever, because I know I can ask questions and figure out a solution to a problem.
Totally. Yeah. I couldn't have said it better. That's entrepreneurship.
Hey.
Well, I think it's about time that we should start wrapping this up. Would you like to tell the listeners or watchers where they can find you and anything else that you're doing cool?
Sure. My name's Hannah Davis, if we didn't already establish that. And my website is bangshoes.com. You can find us on Instagram at bangshoes, on TikTok at bangshoes. My personal Instagram is Hannah C. Davis. Hannah has an H on both ends. And my TikTok, which I'm more active on than Instagram, is Hannah's Shoes, HANNAHSSHOES. Yeah. And we've got really responsive customer service. So if you ever have any questions or comments, you can email help@bangshoes.com. And I would love to hear from you. And we have all these shoes right here.
Yeah, these shoes are really, really cool. And we wanted to bring Hannah on to talk about the shoes because they really align with everything that Pure World is about. And it's another really awesome brand to get to know and check out Hannah and her shoes. If you want to support the podcast, you can always shop on pureworldshop.com. We've got awesome, sustainably sourced bags and other products for all of life's adventures. Yeah, once again, check out these shoes. If you have any comments or ideas or have any, inspiration for what we could be doing next, leave us a comment, send us a DM. You know where to find us. It's Pure World. Have a great day. See ya.